Welcome to Load the Box. The Vikings are 1-0. But before we get into the Vikings, we're going to touch on what feels good and what didn't feel good from last week. Our big predictions show. We called all 14 playoff teams, all four conference finalists, and the Super Bowl. Jordan, let's start with you. What
Oh
feels
boy.
good this Monday?
Feeling good on this Monday that this is being recorded. I picked the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to win the Super Bowl because I wanted to be a special snowflake. I wanted to pick something fun. And boy, did they put the bang thing on Washington. That was a crazy day that Baker Mayfield went out and had. Going at Washington stinks. Their defense is bad. They had like two corners get hurt in the game, I'm pretty sure. And also, it was Jaden Daniels' first ever NFL game. So, not dancing too big yet, but do feel good about that. Wanted to point that out. Also, Atlanta. This one's like my secondary one. I picked them to be a wild card team, and they kind of look like a wild card team. Like, kind of seems like one of those teams that, like, ooh, maybe if they run into like Dallas, that pass rush could be a problem. So pick that. Not gonna go any further into Atlanta. We don't need to do that. But Will, what feels good to you, brother?
I'm going to be very careful the way I say this. Actually, let me start with something really positive. I feel really good about my Andrew Van Ginkel game ball
Yeah, you
prediction.
should. You should.
I feel really good about that one. He got a real game ball. He had a pick six and a sack. I mean, that's even more than I thought he was gonna get. So I'm
Yeah.
feeling great about that. I also feel really good about my Packers not making the playoffs prediction. I'm
Yep.
saying I need to be careful with that because I don't feel good that Jordan Love is out for a few weeks. Good thing it's not a season ender, at least as far as we know. He's gonna miss a few games though, which practically and standings wise hurts the Packers. They're looking at Ryan Tannehill for backup. It's full panic mode in Green Bay. So if we're looking at it from a strictly wins and losses, standings, competing for the postseason, I'm feeling really good about that. We're not getting into week 4 yet, but I'm feeling really good about Vikings at Packers right now in week 4.
Yeah,
So
you have to.
I'm
I want
feeling
to
really good
point
about
out, by the way, because I feel like we're gentlemen on this show.
that.
We
Absolutely.
don't typically like we do the typical Viking fan. We hate the Green Bay Packers. Blah blah blah. We don't want Jordan Love to be hurt. But if you put a couple of dollar bucks, as they say on Bluey, on the Packers to miss the playoffs, and then this Jordan Love things happen, the cash out number probably shoots up if he's going to miss 6 weeks of time. And so you can feel good like, oh, cool. Like this is something, like it's not celebrating that he got injured. It's the circumstances, and that's part of the game. Let's talk about what feels bad. I'll kick this one off. I picked Vegas to go to the playoff, and they look pretty bad against the Chargers. I almost was shocked that you didn't take that little subtle dig at me because you had the Chargers as a playoff team, and I said I was shocked by that. And then they beat the Raiders. So, and I lost money on that game. I did. I picked. I won't go. I picked Pittsburgh, Dallas, and Vegas, all underdogs. Would have paid out crazy. Vegas wrecked me on that one. So, not feeling good about that. Feeling bad actually.
Are we talking big money or are we talking Kevin Wild's 10 cents per bet money?
We are talking. I mean, I'll just be honest. I'm an open book. $10 to pay out like a buck 80.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you pick three and
Great.
a half point plus dogs to win. You put anything on it, you're gonna. It was pretty plus. It was a pretty plus bet. But also feeling bad. This was the big one. I said Justin Jefferson was gonna get 2,100 yards this season. 59 yards to kick things off. Not ideal. Not an ideal stout for the MVP campaign. And also, Mahomes looked pretty good on Thursday night, so that's tough too. But what are you feeling bad about?
Well, I'm feeling bad about the Falcons. Now, it's very early. That division, like I said, is I don't think going to be great. Now, the Saints put up a 47 burger against a high school team, so maybe not. The Saints are good, but I'm not feeling as good about my Falcons after week 1 here. A couple picks from old Kirko Chains and 10 points. Not great. Home debut, Cousins debut. I think the thing that worries me the most about the Falcons with this overreaction week 1 Monday is next 2 games are Philadelphia on the road Monday night and then they host the Chiefs.
Oh boy.
There's a really good chance they're going to be 0-3.
Yeah.
And as we saw from the Vikings last season, now quarterback injuries notwithstanding, coming back from 0-3 to the playoffs is real hard. Now, the Vikings rattled off a 6-1 stretch to get to 6-4. They were in position really to make the playoffs if everything didn't fall apart, but it can be done, but 0-3 is not the way you want to start. I don't know what the percentages of making the playoffs are with that kind of start, but it's not great.
Yeah, I do want to point out. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No.
You got it.
I want you to. Are you insisting I go?
I'm insisting. Go.
Okay, all right. I will insist. I wanted to point this out. This was actually going to be my final thoughts, and it was gonna be kind of about the Falcons, and it was not to panic because if you remember when Brady went to Tampa, and I'm not saying Cousins, Brady, I'm not doing any of that. We're not talking. If they were a wild card team, I'm pretty sure when they won the Super Bowl, were they not?
They were
because the Saints won the division. Yeah, and then they had to go to the Saints in the playoffs.
That's right.
They went to Washington, barely won. Went to Saints, barely won. I think to Green Bay. And then they got to play at home for the Super Bowl. So Tom Brady, the greatest of all time, went to a new offense, new system. You got to think, it's 10 new employees or 10 new teammates, co-workers, whatever. You have to know what each and every one of them is going to do at every given second. That takes time. So I'm not going to panic on the Falcons yet. I had them as a wild card team. I still think they're a wild card team. Pittsburgh has a really good defense.
True. Very true. One quick thing. You mentioned Tom Brady. I'm curious where you land on this. I think where I land on this is that I'm very confident that Peyton Manning is much better at least one thing than Tom Brady is. Ooh. Speaking into a microphone.
Yeah, he seemed like he was trying too hard. Yeah. Like, I think he saw the Romo. Everyone loved him at first, and then everyone switched up really quick. I say, this is the PG version, I say Tony Romo sounds like he stubs his toe when there's a big play, because he'll go like, ooh, Jim, like, and like he'll do all that. So I think he's trying too hard to not be a geek about the game because he doesn't want to be too like much of a personality. And I think he needs to let a little bit through. I don't know. He might not be good at it. I mean, there's a chance he's not good at it.
There's also a chance that it was his first chance. It was his first game.
Peyton's also in a different environment.
Game or something. That's true. Peyton has totally chosen the comedic side of things, where Brady is like full serious.
Yeah, well, Brady's doing like true color commentary, where Peyton's doing like a watch along, which is super cool. Like it's a very cool concept, but I don't think they do that for every Monday night game because I don't think the viewership is there because a lot of people do just. Yeah, man, just give me the commentary. It's a football game. That's how I watch football. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially because now ESPN finally has a good commentary team. Like, say what you want about Joe Buck and Troy Aikman, but they clearly are a massive improvement over what they used to have on Monday Night Football. So,
forget the Giants game. We're gonna do a Joe Buck and Troy Aikman show because I'm with you. The slander on Joe Buck and Troy Aikman is outrageous. They are a very good commentary team. They were the voice of my childhood, man. Like that was if the Vikings had a good team and we played in that 3:00 window, it was Buck and Aikman, and it was like, wow, that's Troy. Like I love them. I absolutely love them. I don't love that Joe Buck gets hail plugs though. That's not very cool. Do you want to talk about the Giants?
Yeah, I'd love to. I think I want to start with the fact that on my work team meeting today, I work a day job like you do.
Absolutely.
Sitting there, on the teams meeting. Colleague of mine joins. He's from the New Jersey area, now lives in Pennsylvania. He's wearing a bright blue Giants t-shirt. And I just couldn't help myself. I'm just sitting there and I had to roast him. Like, what are you doing, man? Did you not watch the game yesterday? And he promptly responded with saying that he is done watching football for the entire season. Oh. He's going to resort to house projects. So that's how Giants fans feel after yesterday. Jordan, how do you feel from a Vikings fan perspective after yesterday?
Okay, so there's two sides of me. There's the side that got to wear my JJ McCarthy shirt and my fake gold chain into work and act like no one could touch me because I was, I'm a Vikings fan and we just won a blowout for the first time in 5 years. But then there's the side of me that like listened to media around this team, specifically like Viking centered media. National media gripes aside, because all they talked about was like, yeah, the Giants, they suck. Next. And like they didn't give any attention to like Aaron Jones or Justin Jefferson, anything like that. But Vikings media is overreacting. You got people talking about like Sam Darnold comeback player of the year, Aaron Jones rushing for, 1,500 yards, like schmucks like me saying JJ is going to go for 2,100. I said that before the season. Okay. That was my most optimistic purple Kool-Aid take. After watching that game, I don't think that's the case. I think exactly what I said, I'm not bragging on myself too much. Exactly what I said I wanted to see happened. Like what? Hang on, let me pull up the stats. Sam Darnold threw for 208 yards, and the Vikings combined their running backs for 111 rushing yards. That's basically what I said. I said, let me get like 80 out of Aaron Jones and like 30 out of Ty Chandler. We got 94 and 17, respectively. So the Vikings ran the ball. They controlled the clock. They won the turnover battle. I know everybody pooped their pants when CJ Ham fumbled, and we were like, here we go again. We're going to lose to a team that we think we're better than week one, all because of the turnovers. And it very quickly just, nobody panicked on that sideline. We won the turnover battle, and we are better than the Giants. I think we pointed that out last week. The Giants roster does not have much to be excited about. Malik Nabers seems like he's going to be good, and they have a good D-line. Other than that, the Vikings smoke them in every other department. And honestly, the D-line I don't think is that, like, I think that's pretty even if you compare edge rushers and interior guys. Like Dexter Lawrence, Andrew Van Ginkel. Who'd you rather have? I think it's Dexter Lawrence, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, man. I mean, I'm feeling good. I feel really good about my 10-7 ish. Make the wild card, compete for a wild card late in the season. I feel like this team can do that. I don't think that they have Super Bowl aspirations. I'm not going to pick them to win the Super Bowl after 1 week, but I feel emboldened in this team's going to compete. This team's not going to be as bad as everybody thinks just because Sam Darnold's the QB. How are you feeling? I know you were a little bit more, maybe realistic is the correct word to use. I think you predicted them to win 8 games this season. We're not going to really pick schedules or anything, but like, would you, after watching one game, adjust anything? Not knowing injuries.
Yeah, I wouldn't. And speaking of injuries, Jordan Addison got the ankle rolled up on. I don't think there's clarity on what that injury is yet. We're speaking on Monday, so there'll be more to come, I'm sure, this week. But I wouldn't, because I gotta be honest, I wasn't really impressed. And I don't want to sound like I'm like some entitled Vikings fan, because I don't feel entitled to anything as a Vikings fan, but I think just watching that game, they played well. The defense got after it. They made New York uncomfortable all afternoon, especially the quarterback. And, I got no complaints about how the offense operated. I loved the balance. I think Sam Darnold throwing 24 passes and the running backs combining for 23 runs, that's fantastic. Maybe some complaints that I would have is, as O'Connell pointed out today, New York had more time of possession. They had more offensive plays. That sort of battle was not won by the Vikings, large in part due to 2 turnovers by the Vikings. Because even when New York turned the ball over, it was, a Daniel Jones interception in the end zone. And I don't remember what the other one was, but
the Ginkle pick six.
Oh, duh. The Ginkle pick six. So, and of course, that would lend itself to fewer offensive plays too, I suppose, if you get a pick six. Yeah. You can't really complain about that part of it. But I also just think New York is really bad, man. I think going into that game, I knew they weren't going to be good. I think I looked up and down that roster and just couldn't find, much to write home about outside of the front 3. And it was just affirmation of that. Malik Nabers might be awesome. I don't know, though, because his quarterback couldn't get him the ball. And Part of the problem with that was that the rest of his teammates were dropping everything. I think they had 5 or 6 drops. Now, I am encouraged by the 5 sacks. I'm encouraged by, again, the defensive stoutness across the board. I'm encouraged by the fact that Will Reichard made every extra point right down the middle, and there was no stress on any of them. I'm encouraged by 3 inside the 20 punts from Mr. Wright, despite the one horrible shank. So there's some things that I'm encouraged by, but I'm not really impressed, because I think after watching that game, yes, the Vikings would have won that game even if New York played well. But considering how bad New York is, I think you should win that game by 20. So it doesn't mean that I think this is all a fluke and the Vikings are going to be bad, but the real test starts now on Sunday, home opener, with the team that we're watching right now, the San Francisco 49ers, coming to town. So
I think everybody had week 1 as a win when they were picking through the Vikings schedule. And even the most downtrodden, pessimistic Vikings fan was probably like, that's going to be a competitive game against the Giants that they might lose, and then they might start 0-6 or something like that. But like you said, it's a slate after this. It's the Niners, it's the Texans, it's the Jets, it's the Packers and the Rams, and there's a lot of teams there. Now, injuries happening and things like that. Some of those games might get a little easier. The Vikings might pick up some wins. But I agree with you. I think people are getting a little bit too excited, and we should be excited. The defense played incredible. I mean, that's what you do to bad teams, is you smother them and you don't let them do anything on you. And that's what they did. I mean, they 2 field goals is crazy, one of which came off of a CJ Ham fumble that gave them the ball in plus territory. And you said they should beat them by 20. Well, they beat them by 22. And that's just my way of gloating that it's probably only going to be for 1 week. But we both had them winning. You had them winning by 3. I had them winning by 10. I win week 1. I get the win after getting. I stopped keeping track. Like it was a blowout last year in terms of the score predictions. It got pretty
we
bad.
stopped keeping track after a while. Something that the great Dustin Baker tweeted yesterday, which was hilarious, is that this is the first game in about 5 years where Vikings fans could actually just sit back in the fourth quarter and just not be stressed at all. Because win, lose, or draw, they have had ties, I guess, in the last 6 years. Like, every game has been stressful in the fourth quarter. There's, other than maybe the games where they got blown out in 2022, but there hasn't been a stress-free fourth quarter, gosh, probably since 2017, really. So,
and
it's
I love that
maybe
people
2019. It's been a minute.
I love that people are attributing that to the quarterback. We won't speak his name, and I'm like, what? Like, there was not a dagger play in that game. Like, the Vikings that was truly, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, that was the most complete game I think I've watched the Vikings play in a long time. I'm trying to think of when the last one was, and it probably was like 2019, maybe in the 2020 season, where it was just, oh yeah, we are clearly the better team. And even in like the Green Bay game, Kevin O'Connell's first game that we won by 16 points, that game was like Green Bay had drops. Green Bay had, some missed assignments on defense. That felt like Green Bay really just pooped the bed. This one just felt like the Vikings went out there and played bully ball, which is inspiring. And, I saw something on X that was, it was like, I don't know if my TV was messed up, but that was the loudest, like, Vikings game I'd heard in terms of the pad sounds from the field, because it just felt like the defense was hitting harder. And I do think that this defensive line is something to reckon with. I think it's going to keep us in games. I think it's going to keep a lot of games competitive. I think, games against San Francisco, which we'll do a breakdown of that later this week, but games against San Francisco are going to be closer than maybe we expected before the season because of what this D-line does. And there's just so much depth on it. I mean, when Pat Jones can come in as like your 5th best guy, yeah, he's going to get 2 sacks because he's coming in with completely fresh legs and fresh everything, and he's just going to clean up. I want to talk to you. We did yesterday, when this posts yesterday, a video went up, a new series on the channel called Grades from the Couch, where me and my brother, hand out letter grades to Sultan Vikings players. We talked about Justin Jefferson. He only had like 4 catches for 59 yards. He did lead the team in receiving yards, which was cool. And he had the touchdown on the fourth and goal. What did you think of his performance? Do you think we could expect less of a workload? I kind of gave my take last week about good quarterbacks don't force the ball to their number ones. Do you think Sam Darnold isn't going to force the ball to Jefferson? Or do you think the game just kind of played out in such a way where it was like, why do we need to throw it to Jefferson? I mean, I don't remember seeing him take a snap halfway through the fourth quarter. It felt like he was out. Like, why risk it? So what do you think of Jefferson and his usage?
Really good question. I think I would probably lean more towards just the nature of the game. Like you said, basically at halftime, the Vikings were up by 11, I think, and it didn't really feel like there was a high stress snap for the rest of the game. So, oftentimes with Justin Jefferson, we'll see him, at least in years past, with big plays in big moments. I think to that New England Thanksgiving game and those ridiculous catches he made in between multiple defenders. Obviously the Buffalo game. I think even the Jets game from a couple years ago, he had some really big plays and a touchdown in that game, if I remember right. And the Indianapolis game, he had the quadruple move on Stephon Gilmore, and I think his cleats are still stuck to the USA or US Bank turf. But there just wasn't a big play in this game. It was kind of over after
The Jalen
Jefferson
Naylor
caught
play
that
was a big
touchdown.
play.
Yeah, that Jalen Naylor play was beautiful. And honestly, that was kind of the dagger.
Yeah, it was.
And it was dictated large in part by, as Jefferson said post game, 18 going in motion.
Yeah.
So when he went in motion and I saw that, my eyes lit up and my ears perked up because I was just waiting to see what was up their sleeve. Because when he goes in motion like that, it's not just for dress. There's something behind it, and it was the little shoulder fake from Darnold froze the slot corner, and it was over.
It was a thing of beauty too.
So
I mean, like we watched the replay back at my parents' house. Like I think we watched it 15 times, and I just
yeah,
kept rewinding.
did
And
the
I would
same
look
today.
at someone else, and I would say, "Look, he pumps, and look at the guy who's on Naylor. He like dives. Like he didn't just freeze him. He committed to going to make that play, and it was." Sam Darnold has a career in acting after his playing days are over. Like that was a beautiful acting job.
It was
That little
great.
pump.
Yeah, yeah. So I think looking at that, that's not a stat. You're not going to get a stat for that. But the occupying of the defense, I think that touchdown catch was insanely clutch. I think that throw was even more impressive.
That was crazy.
I think oftentimes, I think I saw people commentating on that, like, oh, well, you can't give Justin Jefferson single coverage. It's over. Well, yeah, there's that too. But the throw from Darnold had to be perfect. The coverage was decent. It had to be out in front and it had to be low. And it was perfect. And it was a fourth down play. If that throw isn't perfect, then the Giants take the ball over, and who knows what happens. So I think from what little was needed from Jefferson, I think he was just fine.
Yeah.
No qualms, no concerns. It's not like last year or even the year before in some of those early games of the season where I remember week 3 against Detroit in 2022, he had like 14 yards, and the Vikings were saved by the Lions kind of throwing the game away and missing some field goals. And KJ Osborne coming up huge on the game-winning drive. But that at that point in his career, I don't think he had quite figured out how to manipulate the game as much as he has now. And he showed up in basically, a few big moments, and that was enough. So I think for what was needed, no qualms, no concerns.
Yeah, I agree
Yes.
with you. I'm and maybe this is just because I I really want him to be the first wide receiver to win most valuable player. But like, I do think the bigger days are coming. And I mean, Addison, I really hope this ankle is nothing, because that he's going to force teams to start respecting the entire field. Because obviously you have to be more creative than this, but just put Jefferson and Addison on opposite sides of the field and pick your poison, man. I mean, Addison is so good. I mean, and he was coming up clutch. He was hitting out routes, by the sideline. Sam Darnold, honestly, dropping dimes. Like, I'm not gonna overreact. There was a lot of space. The Giants secondary is not very good, but man, Sam Darnold seems like he can sling it. I mean, there was a ball to Jefferson in double coverage where only Jefferson could get it, and Jefferson got it, and it was part of that 99-yard touchdown drive. So, look, I don't think anybody's saying we're about to watch the 98 Vikings, go 15-1 and 15-2, I guess, and get a bye and do all this. I think we're excited. It's fun to do shows like this, and I think we typically do we do 2 game ball segments because we're lazy. So we do the pre-game game ball where we predict, and then we do the post-game game ball where we kind of see if we were right, and then we actually say who deserves the game ball. And Kevin O'Connell, of course, gave the game balls, I think, to the correct people. And I think defensively it was Van Ginkel, and offensively, to me, it's Aaron Jones. What a debut. We really haven't even talked about him that much. But underrated aspect to this, the offensive line looked bad. Like, it looked like it was going to be a long day, and they got it together. I mean, they kept Sam clean. They kept him good, and we ran the ball for 111 yards. I mean, I don't know what else to say. The O-line, I don't know what was said to them after that first drive, but kudos to them. They all deserve a little bit of respect.
Absolutely. I was going to remark at that too. And I think part of it was a really good offensive approach. There weren't too many dropbacks where Darnold felt like he had to sit there for a while. It was quick throws. It was decisive throws. I felt like the play calling was putting him in a position to succeed early on, which was huge. Especially, good defensive front, first game, all that stuff. And I felt like the game plan was curated well for that. But also, you're right. I mean, I had some concern right off the gate of not only did they get a sack on that first drive, Giants did, but also it just felt like our guys were getting pushed around. And so it almost felt like I stopped paying attention to the offensive line because it just felt like it was no longer a problem anymore. The only sack the Vikings allowed was, I think, that first third down of the game.
Yeah.
And no further sacks after that. Now, Darnold had the interception with his hand hit, I believe, by Lawrence. So that was obviously a problem later in the game. But honestly, at that point in the game was kind of over anyways. So, yeah, I mean, big kudos to the offensive line. I also just think it really helps having Aaron Jones. I think having 2 backs now that you can consistently rely on. It's also remarkable seeing how Ty Chandler looked like clearly our best running back last year, and now clearly he's our second best running back.
Not even close.
So
it's a blowout.
Tells you the gap between Aaron Jones and Alexander Madison is very large. Now, it's week 1. It's not time to mail in all of our final takes from the season, but I just kind of found myself just shaking my head at all the people who told me, well, Aaron Jones is washed and Aaron Jones is old. He looks like he's still got a burst, man. I don't know, like the shiftiness and the wiggle and just the speed. Something that Jonathan Vilma, one of his moments on the broadcast, a good one, was him remarking at Aaron Jones, his ability to basically put his foot in the ground and make one cut and just go. He makes one quick decision. He doesn't overthink it, and then he just hits the hole.
Yeah.
He doesn't dance around. He doesn't waste time. He just goes. And something that Harrison Smith said today was having a running game in the NFL is quite the weapon. And it's totally true. if the Vikings can continue this somewhat ability to stay balanced, like I said, it was about 50-50. That would be a huge boon for this season. I can't even tell you how much better the Vikings' chances are of beating teams like San Francisco or um, you know, even New York with their good defensive front, New York Jets that is. It's just having a good running game is going to be a huge boon. So,
Oh yeah. Well, and
offensive line,
especially,
Aaron Jones.
I mean, look at
Go ahead.
look at last year's San Fran game, and we'll talk more about this obviously later in the week. But and I'm gonna say this, and then I'm gonna move into final thoughts if that's okay, because we'll sit right at this half hour mark. But last year against San Francisco, we had a lead. We needed to get like a first down or two to put the game away, and we couldn't do it. And so it ended up coming down to, I think Cam Bynum made the game sealing interception, and good on you, make the play. The defense stood up, but also don't let great offenses take the field with a chance to beat you. Like you can't do that. So I'll move into my final thoughts. Well, the whole point of that is, with a running game, you can just. All right, sorry everybody, a little bit of technical difficulties. I have a toddler. I was moving into my final thoughts, and my final thoughts, I said I was going to make them about Atlanta, but I kind of got that off, so I kind of get to double dip here a little bit. And they're really simple. It's just, this is fun. It's kind of nice playing with house money. There's no expectations on this season. I don't think we'll win in a Super Bowl. I don't have hopes that if we make the playoffs, I'm still going to be like, we're not supposed to be here. You know what I mean? So, it's just fun. It's fun to come on here. This is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be a Super Bowl contender. So I'm just having a good time. I hope that we are competitive in every game this season. I hope that we win some more games like this. That would be pretty freaking cool if we're able to put the bang thing on teams. But that's all from me. Make sure to follow the show at LTB Vikings on X. Make sure to follow Will on X at Will Badloos. Shop Unified and smash that subscribe and like button. Update on the schedule. It's been scrolling down here, but Tuesdays will be grades from the couch. Wednesdays will be the post-game review main show. Thursdays should be tentatively the pre-game look-ahead show. That might move to Fridays every now and then. And then that should be the content coming out on the channel. So 3 days a week, we're your guys for the content. Really fun stuff. Will, I will let you take us home after a big 22-point Vikings win.
I'm just gonna say more of the same, Jordan. I saw right before the game, a couple days before the game, Ivan Pace had said something along the lines of, actually, I'll just quote him directly. When asked about the matchup with the Giants offense, he said, "Ain't even going to be no matchup." He was right. Everyone was mad about him talking trash, and no games have even been played yet, and all that. It was not a matchup. It was not even competitive. The Vikings had 12 quarterback hits. The Giants had 2. The Vikings had 5 sacks. The Giants had 1. No team will have scored less than the Giants in Week 1 this year. The next closest was the Falcons with 10. I think maybe the Raiders had 10 as well. Quick aside on that, the reason why I didn't clown you about the Raiders is because I did not expect the Raiders to put up a fight with the Chargers, so I was not impressed by the Chargers. Anyways, so all that being said, Ivan Pace was right. It wasn't no matchup, and the Vikings are 1-0. They move on to a much tougher opponent next week, the 49ers. It's the home opener, so hopefully US Bank's going to be loud and excited. And assuming that the 49ers score more than the 6 points they have right now, then I think we can assume that the Vikings will be facing a better offense than they faced in Week 1. So we will be back later this week, like Jordan said. We'll talk about that 49ers matchup, see whether or not Christian McCaffrey's trending towards playing. We'll talk more about that later this week. Until then, this has been fun. Skol, y'all.